10 reasons you should start collecting physical media right now before it's too late. Number 1. There is a limited and diminishing supply of many forms of physical media. Companies have almost stopped producing CDs and DVDs. Blu-rays are dwindling, and 4K Blu-ray is mostly in the realm of limited print collector publishers. Other forms of media like VHS and audio cassettes have been out of production for decades. There has been a resurgence of music being printed on vinyl records again, but like 4K Blu-ray, it's often done in limited print runs and only available to die-hard collectors who are willing to pay exorbitant prices and often wait months for lengthy pre-orders. In the used market, there is still a healthy supply of old media, but people, especially collectors, are becoming aware of physical media and are beginning to buy it again. Since the new production is relatively scarce, the price of used items will naturally increase as supply diminishes. Number 2. Price. Although certain items that have caught the attention of collectors can be expensive, most physical media is quite cheap. Simply buying a DVD player for $15 secondhand and buying the seasons of your 2 or 3 favorite shows can give you hundreds of hours of enjoyment. Many of us watch shows like Star Trek, Friends, or The Office over and over. Streaming services fight to have these big IPs in their library, so you will stay invested in their service between their big original shows being released. The end result is that you probably pay $15 to $20 per month for 3 or 4 of these services every month forever. That can easily add up to $700 per year or more. You could buy the physical copies of these handful of favorite shows for a fraction of that price and never pay again. Number 3. Collecting physical media can be a great way to discover new things you love. When you are out at a thrift store perusing the shelves and you see something interesting that you had never heard of, the barrier of entry is very low. Often a DVD or CD can cost as little as $1. There are thousands of things on older media that have never made their way to streaming services, and even more that just come and go from one service to another, and you may lose access to them or not even know they are there. Number 4. Local and regional content. In every area on the map, there are unique content creators, local news and cable channels, radio stations, and much more. Here in Canada, we had Much Music, the maple syrup version of MTV. Each year, Much Music released compilation albums of the top charting music in several genres, including a series known as Big Shiny Tunes. This series may or may not be available in other countries due to licensing issues. Local TV stations may record high school or college sports, or even major league playoffs with a local announcer and local flair, and release them on disc. For me, things like the Toronto Santa Claus Parade brings me back to my youth, and finding recordings from 20 or 30 years ago brings me a lot of joy. This kind of thing will be unique to your geographical area and will not likely ever be available online. Number 5. While physical media and its associated devices will eventually stop working, we have many decades left to enjoy the hobby. Some forms of physical media are more durable than others. Some discs in certain situations can be subject to disc rot, a condition where the adhesives between the layers of the disc break down, allowing the data layer to oxidize and corrode. Discs are also sensitive to scratching and breaking as well, but if handled and stored at a normal indoor temperature, they can last a very long time and will probably outlive you. Magnetic media, such as cassettes and VHS tapes, can degrade over time, especially with repeated use. They are also subject to physical damage to the delicate tape inside if it gets caught in a dirty or faulty machine. This doesn't mean you shouldn't buy them though, just know that the quality of used tapes will vary and a small percentage may have degraded to the point of being unusable. I am currently using VHS and audio cassettes that are over 40 years old, and the majority are still in acceptable condition. Number 6. Things like VCRs, cassette players, and DVD players, these are the items you actually need to play the physical media, are getting harder to find in working condition for a good price. If you want to invest in a music or movie collection, you will need the appropriate device to play the media. Unfortunately, electronics with moving parts will degrade faster than any of the media they're designed to play. A wise person would buy these devices and probably a couple of spares now while they are still reasonably plentiful and cheap, and do some research to discover which brands and models are known to be the highest quality. Keep in mind that often there are many options that can play physical media. A DVD can be played in a standalone DVD player, but it can also be played in most video game consoles, including fairly modern ones like the Sony PS4. While the newest computers often do not come with optical drives, both laptops and desktops that are just a few years old or older also have optical drives that can play multiple styles of discs, like CDs and DVDs. Access to players for this media should remain good for the foreseeable future, but as very few are currently being manufactured, supply is diminishing. Number 7. Never lose access to content again. Most of us either stick with one or two streaming services or rotate through them, meaning that certain shows and movies will not be available to us at certain times, or potentially never. With the explosion of services like Netflix, Hulu, Disney+, HBO, and the dozens of others, accessing all your favorite shows requires more and more monthly subscriptions, and worse, shows that you were once watching drop off one service only to reappear months or years later on another. Depending on your watching habits, this can be a big problem. If you're like me and always have a Star Trek show in rotation and watch an episode almost daily, it becomes far easier and cheaper to own the shows once and for all. Number 8. Quality. Many forms of physical media can contain higher quality versions of the content you are looking for than the streaming services provide. Services like Netflix make use of dynamic resolution, meaning that they fluctuate the quality of your stream based on the strength of your internet signal. And even at the best 4K quality, they are using compression techniques to improve your bandwidth that lowers the quality compared to an ultra high definition 4K Blu-ray. Similarly, services like Apple Music and Spotify store and share many of their files in the MP3 format, which is nowhere near as high quality as the CD and carries none of the character of vinyl records. It's worth noting that if you have a home theater system, the audio files on Blu-ray and 4K Blu-ray are uncompressed as well, resulting in a vastly superior surround sound experience over the streaming services. Number 9. Preservation. This is by far the biggest section of this video. There are literally thousands, no, realistically millions of pieces of content on physical media. Songs on CDs, audiobooks on cassette, children's music on 45 RPM records, technical manuals on the printed page, religious material published by small church groups, documentaries on VHS, movies on DVD and HD DVD, even movies and shows on UMD, a proprietary disc that could only be played in Sony's PSP video game console. Many of these things have not moved over to streaming for many reasons. Let's discuss a few. Licensing. Some things like movies and video games contain music or images that belong to someone else. They pay for the rights to use them for the original release, but if the company wants to release it to streaming, they have to pay again. If the publisher does not feel that re-releasing the content will make enough money to justify it, it just never happens. Royalties. Similar to licenses, royalties have to be paid out to actors in some cases when the property is re-released. Famously, the Disney show 5 Mile Creek has never resurfaced since its original run because it was one of Nicole Kidman's first significant roles, and she is demanding too much money now as a superstar to be worth the risk of it releasing and not getting enough views. Studio closures. Smaller productions like documentary series that may once have aired on cable channels, or indie horror movies that may have been released straight to VHS often fall through the cracks. Sometimes the studio or the publisher go out of business and the IP and assets are bought by a holding company. They assess what IPs are worth money to resell and the rest are simply lost to time. Remastering costs. The modern audience expects a certain level of quality. Most of us have HD or UHD TVs and expect content to fill our screens. This means, at the very least, that shows shot for television before about 2006 need to be converted from the 4:3 aspect ratio to the 16:9 widescreen presentation that we are accustomed to today. Also, things that were shot on film can be upscaled to a higher resolution, while shows shot on VHS or Betamax are much harder to upscale. The owners of the IP have to decide whether to spend potentially millions upgrading the product to modern standards, if that's even possible, or whether to just let it languish and focus on making newer, more relevant content. Modern audiences. The content of some shows or movies from the past can be considered objectionable by modern standards. Famously, an early Disney film, Song of the South, has been permanently buried because of the stereotypical way that it depicted black people. Several Disney animated shorts from the 1940s have also been banned because of racist or political themes and are only available on very old copies of physical media. Without these lost pieces of physical media, we may never have a chance to see content like this ever again. Old media is a snapshot of our culture at the time it was printed. Many VHS have ads and trailers for other movies and music that can often be more fun to watch than the actual movie. DVDs famously had special features, which may include deleted scenes, bloopers, commentary, and interviews with the cast and crew. You may find the movie on Netflix, but none of these extra features will be available to you. Number 10. Physical media is slowly disappearing. People have been discarding CDs, DVDs, and other forms of physical media basically since 2010 or so, especially when services like iTunes and Netflix seemed like the superior alternative. Large quantities went to landfills, never to be seen again. The rest have slowly worked their way through pawn shops and thrift stores and back out into the public in the hands of dedicated collectors. While you can still find quite a lot of physical media out there is considerably less now than even 2 years ago, and the prices are starting to rise. Goodwill and Value Village used to price VHS under $1 regardless of what the movie was, but recently they have doubled that to $2 or even $3 each, and they have started cherry-picking the best quality stuff and putting it under glass, or selling it off on an online auction. This goes for things like video games as well. Prices are steadily rising, and as less people buy new physical games and instead choose digital copies, there is less and less supply in the market. Do these 10 reasons make you want to buy physical media again? Or am I just a dinosaur who can't let go of the past? Let me know in the comments if you have started to buy physical media again, or if you are fully on board with the all-digital future. Thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, stay classy.